Commander Know-It-All reporting for duty. What's up, my know-it-alls? Well, it is that time again. That's right, we're going to do some reviewing, and specifically we are reviewing Picard, Star Trek Picard, Season 2, Episode 1, The Stargazer. I can't express to you how happy I am to be doing Star Trek specifically. This is the Mr. Know-It-All Show Star Quest Edition. I say Star Quest Edition because we are going to be going on a quest. That is to explore all the various Star Treks we can. So hopefully you subscribe to the channel, and you will continue to enjoy the Mr. Know-It-All reviews of all the Star Trek things. So why am I talking about Star Trek? Well, obviously it must be because pop culture and everything else. No, my friends. I once held the rank of commander in Starfleet, the International Star Trek Fan Club. When I was 14 years old, I was walking through the Coastland Center Mall in Naples, Florida, and that's when I came across some folks in nice, colorful outfits. The local USS Starquest out of Naples, Florida, which was the chapter of Starfleet, the International Fan Club, and they were inviting me to their club, but specifically, they were going to be going to Star Trek VI, the Undiscovered Country's premiere. And that is where I first got the opportunity to join the club. So when I did, I was introduced to Star Trek The Next Generation, and I had a uniform, and I had a rank. I started as ensign, went to lieutenant, and eventually became chief engineer as lieutenant commander. And so I'm a big fan of Star Trek, huge fan. I would dare say Star Trek's my fandom, and we can kind of get into some more specifics about Star Trek. In fact, I'll probably do a special just kind of talking a little bit more about Star Trek, what it means to me and sort of what the culture is. So if you're a big fan of Star Trek, hey man, subscribe, hit the little bell icon to be notified when new content drops. But right now, we're here to talk about the episode. So I believe we get to see things that you don't normally get to experience in the Star Trek universe, because Discovery's doing some things and whatnot, and of course there's Prodigy and Lower Decks, and by the way, all fantastic things. So you have to remember, when I was first into Star Trek, Sci-Fi wasn't as big as it is now. Shortly after the Next Generation and whatnot, and some other iterations, eventually you got the Sci-Fi Channel, and the Sci-Fi Channel played a lot of older things. But ultimately, when you were talking about Sci-Fi, Star Trek was the only game. Little by sliders and some other things, but those things didn't last very long. Eventually, there was an overwhelming glut of good science fiction at one point. And Star Trek became sort of the redheaded stepchild and moved on. And it became less and less a thing. Conventions became less frequent, though they never went away, but they weren't as popular, and pretty soon you got to see this homogenization of the fandom into just sci-fi fans. So I'm a huge back in the day there was exclusively Star Trek conventions. So this resurgence for me is wonderfully exciting. I'm not one of those fans who sits here and says, that's not Star Trek, and Star Trek is this and that and the other. Look, man, Star Trek is Star Trek, okay? And so let's get into the episode. The episode starts with a red alert sign, and you're kind of dropped right into the middle of action, which is so very Star Trek. And you get to all these cool Dutch angles and stuff. You can very much tell this, like many of the more current iterations of the franchises, is informed by cinematic storytelling. And you see three crewmen who are running. They're running through the halls and whatnot, and explosions are happening and whatnot. It's a security detail. Eventually, security detail gets to the bridge, and once on the bridge, you see something is attacking the bridge, and you see everybody's there. So you see Seven, you see Agnes, you see Raffi, you see Chris, and it's really this. Ultimately, what ends up happening is that the something is attacking the bridge, and you see all these little kind of arm things, sort of very Doc Ock, shooting around, latching onto the bridge, if you will, and you get to see all the LCAR screens are sort of, that's the little control panels, are all shaking and sort of glitching. And so, and at one point, you see Picard finally, and he gets up, and he's very much, he basically calls for the self-destruct. And he stands up and he turns around at the sound of his name, and you see what looks like somebody in a black helmet, and that's where he is facing someone. And then we get the title sequence. The title sequence is seasons, same song, a little modified, a little bit of a drum line in there that wasn't there previously. Also, the imagery has changed as well. Still, very cool. I love it. I think it's very good and inspiring. And then we cut to a scene of Earth right after the introduction, and then we push into Chateau Picard. Specifically, it's Harvest Day, and they're harvesting the grapes. I kind of love the fact that they're using transporter technology to grab the grapes and whatnot. I'm not sure if they're being tagged or what's going on, but I always felt, even in the original, when I was watching Next Generation and whatnot, I always felt like they were not utilizing this technology to its fullest. I'm like, I'm sorry, but transporter the only thing that started really last season that I really thought worked was the fact that when you can walk through a door and it's like, phew, you're gone, you're transported somewhere. Similar to how I showed up here. And so it's very, very cool, and you get the sense that something has changed in their lives, and you don't really know what it is other than the fact that all you see is a close-up of, other than the workers, is a close-up of Jean-Luc and a close-up of Laris. That's the Romulan woman who's in his service. You don't see any sign of the male Romulan from last season. And so that's you start to kind of get an idea. So it shows the two of them sitting down a little bit later. They're enjoying a bottle of wine, and they have a conversation. And Laris makes some overtures toward Picard. Picard has to kind of rebuff that. As he does, what's funny is it's on point, but that's the point of contention for this episode. And dare I say the season. Picard has troubles loving. And even though you're going to see people argue about, oh, what about this episode and that episode? Every one of those episodes you're thinking of were unique storytelling points in his life. That doesn't mean that they were defining points in his life. So by that I mean, obviously, something may have happened with Crusher in the past. Something may have happened with the alien species in one of the episodes that he was the probe, where he lived an entire life, and but it wasn't his life. So at the end of the day, Picard has lived through relationships, but the relationships have kind of all been transient at best. So that night, he has a dream, and we get to see a young Picard in the what eventually becomes kind of the not Rose Garden, but the atrium, so to speak, where the botanical whatever. And you get to see a picture of his mom. Now, they're retconning some things for his story, and not in a bad way. I don't mean that, but I mean is because you can't tell every single story when you're telling a space odyssey. And so you find out that his parents had some issues, and ultimately his mom was the one who told him, look up at the stars, my little stargazer. Okay, so even though his first starship was called the USS Stargazer, you understand that he is the Stargazer. That's the name of the episode with spaces. Okay, so you're talking about an individual, not necessarily a ship, though the double entendre is utilized very well later. But in this dream, he's suddenly adult again, and he picks up a piece of broken glass, and the broken glass has a little teeny piece of painted rose, and we got to see the similar imagery in the opening. So I'm assuming this is going to be important later. And he looks up at the sky, and you see kind of the broken thing. And then we get to see space, because we push out into space, and we go past the planets and all this stuff. Very Carl Sagan. And as will happen, because it's Star Trek, there is a spatial anomaly. Bro, give me them spatial anomalies. Anyways, and so there's a big, and of course it's green, so we know Borg. The minute I saw the green, I was like, oh, it's got to be Borg. I don't care what's going on. That's like the green in certain movies is the Matrix. In Star Trek, it's the Borg. So I was like, okay. And so then we cut to, you find out Picard's got to do a ceremony, and he goes to Starfleet Academy that morning in San Francisco. And they're honoring the graduates, of course, but also who are all going to be assigned to their various ships. And then Elnor is the first fully Romulan graduating cadet, which is awesome. I'm super excited. Picard gives him a gift. It's the book from Spock that Spock had written when he was the first Vulcan, fully Volk by himself going through the academy. So it's very relevant. Also, nice little callback. Love me some Spock references. And so then we cut to the a very familiar little ship. And so I kind of assumed, oh, we're going to see, you know, Captain Christos or whatever else is going to be whatever. And then, boom, you see Jerry Ryan, 7 of 9. 7 of 9 is apparently being ambushed, attacked some folks trying to steal some medical supplies on her ship. She's still part of the Fenris Rangers. And so, but she's put the ship to work. Apparently, it's her ship now. Funny thing. So she merged all the holograms. So you don't have all the different holograms anymore, but you got one guy now. And it's all that Spanish guy. And he's, y también él habla español, porque la única cosa que tú vas a hablar si vas a estar hablando español es esa palabra, porque esa palabra son los únicos que alguien puede hablar. And of course, there's subtitles. By the way, that was all real. I'm Puerto Rican, so I really love this guy. He's super Cuban. Cubans are our cousins. And so, but yeah, it's dope. And then eventually Jerry Ryan also happens to see or catch the opening of this thing, and it's green. And so she's, you get to see her face over green light. And of course, each character gets a moment to shine as you kind of touch point with them. So we see Dodge. She's currently on the Delta homeworld in the Beta Quadrant, and she's being an emissary for the synthetics. You get to see Agnes, who's with her, who apparently is going through this on-again, off-again thing with Rios. And eventually Rios calls them, and they get transported up to the Stargazer. Oh, that's right. The USS Stargazer back being commissioned again. I love it. Why are you guys so afraid of the Enterprise? Where's the Enterprise, baby? Come on, man. Tell me Admiral Riker's flying around in that thing? Anyway, whatever. So the Stargazer but it's a beautiful callback, especially for Picard. Very personal. There was an episode of Next Generation that did that too, and you really got to see a side of the of him that you never really understood or thought was there, or knew was there, and I think it's great. So Rios is the captain of the Stargazer, which is dope. And so they immediately are heading to this thing, and in the meantime, you go back to Starfleet Academy briefly, and you get to find out that Raffi is a lieutenant commander on the Excelsior. And she's there kind of watching out for Elnor. But so everybody's sort of getting their, I don't want to say happy ending, but definitely everyone's getting their shot to shine. There's also a brief conversation of note where Raffi talks about sort of she wants from 7 of 9. So they're apparently in a relationship of some kind. And which all of these little points of story when it comes to relationship are all kind of marrying through this through line of relationships and changes and all this other stuff. It's really, it's interesting. I like where they're going with it. So then we cut to the Stargazer, and specifically you get to see the rift and the riven, and then all of a sudden they start getting a communication, and the science officer can't figure it out. So of course, Agnes, because she's brilliant, Daystrom Institute, come on. She opens up the thing, very hologram-like. It's awesome. She's like, and she looks at this communication thing coming through, and then she's like pulling things out. I love the interactive hologram setup. And so what she does is she ends up deciphering the first few words are "Help us, Picard." That's right, help us, Picard. So eventually you get back to Los Angeles. We go to Los Angeles, and you see Picard, Jean-Luc, transport to an alley, and the alley is in the Forward Avenue Historic District. And it's a great little sign, the City of Greater Los Angeles Historical Site. And so it's Forward Avenue. Forward Avenue that leads to the 10 bar. 10 forward. Shut up! For those of you playing at home who are not really familiar, 10 Forward was the name of the lounge on the Galaxy-class starship. Actually, it was its reference number, so they just call it 10 Forward, which is where you relaxed. And so you walk in, and sure enough, it's Guinan. Man, it's Guinan. it's really great as they do this really cool thing where she mentions, Elorians, she's like, I know you're long-lived, and she says, well, we have the ability to control kind of how we age and at the speed in which we reflect our age. And I've learned that humans are very fragile and don't like to be reminded of that fragility, so I go ahead and try to keep up with you guys. So it's a nice little way of explaining the fact that she's clearly older. And Picard's talking, and he's like, I don't know what's going on, I can't love, and this and that. And she tries to tell him, listen, man, you're not broken. You just haven't faced whatever that's going on. Why don't you tell me what happened in the past? And he can't really face it yet. So they just decide to drink. It's pretty awesome. Little Saurian brandy. It's pretty cool. And so then you have Picard, of course, who gets summoned by Starfleet Admiral, who comes to his house. And sure enough, she's like, they only want to talk to one person. And he's like, oh, come on. And she's like, mm-mm. And she hands him the little comm badge, and you're like, you can't get away, bro. You can't get away. It's very reminiscent of an old Kirk scene from one of the movies. I can't remember which one, where he's like, oh, come on, get out of here. They're like, you only want to talk to Jim Kirk. And he's like, whatever. Anyways, it's very similar. It's like Picard, and he's like, oh, come on, man. But sure enough, he goes, and he gets on the Stargazer, and everybody, all the officers are like in the hallways are like, oh my goodness. Of course, Seven's there. Come to find out, the ship is the first of a new wave of ships that utilizes Borg technology that was experienced or experimented with during the Borg Cube. So these are very resilient ships designed for hardcore space adversities, if you will. And she's somewhat uncomfortable, but ultimately they get to the bridge, and Rios is there, and they go check out this thing, and sure enough, Picard says, oh, I forgot. Along with the message, help us, Picard, is suddenly an entire Article 15. Article 15, to those of you playing at home for Star Trek, is what we call the application for enlistment or enrollment or entrance into the Federation. So whatever this is, because they don't know yet, I know it's the Borg. You know it's the Borg. Seven knows it's the Borg. But at the end of the day, they're like, if there's even a possibility that this is a thing, we have to take it seriously. And sure enough, this ginormo face ship thing pops its head through the rift in space. And they basically say there's no more time. And you cut to this view of space, and it's like the entire fleet is dropping out of warp. It's like, and you're like, okay, hi guys, they're all there. And so then you get something I love, something that is so Star Trek, especially Star Trek The Next Generation. You get a briefing. Mission briefing, and that's where all the department head type people sit around a desk, sit around a table, and they're talking about what's going down. It's very, very Next Generation. They're back in the day. That's how it was. You'd see, Crusher, Worf, Data, Riker, Troy, Geordi, everybody just right around the thing, and Picard's sitting there trying to figure out what's going on, and it's like, I want assessments, and it's brilliant. It's wonderful. It's chef's kiss. It's so Star Trek. And I was really excited to see that. And eventually they get called back onto the bridge. The Borg express that there is no way in heck that we have no time to wait, and they have to commence negotiations, and they're going to send over one person, and it's their queen. And then they fire a transporter signal like a phaser at the shields. And the shields eventually give, and the transporter signal weeds its way through, and then sure enough, like a self-fulfilling prophecy, we circle back to this part of the episode where you see the person in the helmet and the suit and the outfit. First off, it's very, very different than anything we've ever seen from Borg before. There's aesthetics to this look, and the Borg normally don't care about aesthetics. So they clearly need something, but no one's going to tell us what. And eventually, there's of course, what else is going to happen on the bridge when a Borg Queen shows up? Weapons fire starts happening. The Borg Queen then all of a sudden you see the little machination things on the helmet. 4 shots, or a bunch of shots, all hit once and knock everybody down. So then, and you find out, Seven finds out they are in fact stunning, not killing. And then again, we circle back. You see the security details show up and the whole bit. And eventually, Picard issues the self-destruct. And the Borg Queen is saying something to him, and then poof, the ship is destroyed. We then cut to white, and we find ourselves in the same little rose atrium garden thing. Picard wakes up. He has a different comm badge, different symbol, still reminiscent of the Starfleet symbol, but a little bit very different. He walks through, and you see a painting. All the paintings are different in his house. The one that was originally the Galaxy-class ship is now a tiger, some sort of an Asian-y looking tiger thing. And then eventually we get to the picture of him, and he's wearing a black version of the old red uniforms. Remember the old red ones from the movies, the one with the little flap over thing? And but he's wearing a black version of that, and you're like, what's going on? And then we get the greatest scene ever that I was hoping. All I wanted, and I've said this, was show me de-aged John de Lancie as Q, and he does, and they do, and it's brilliant. And because it's only so short, it looks amazing. And he's like, well, you've gotten older than I thought you would be. Here, I don't want to let you feel left. I don't want to feel left out. And he becomes older version of himself, and it's brilliant. And Jean-Luc's like, what have you done? What's going on? Because he immediately has to assume it's got to be Q's fault. And then and yeah, he's like, I told you the trial never ends. We are at the end of the road not taken. It's pretty interesting. And then we get this cool little season premiere or season preview of the rest of the season, and it's exciting, man. It's gonna be time travel, of course. It's gonna be, which we all kind of knew. They're coming back. They're coming back to 2024. They're coming back to the same. Coming back here to the past, man. Good old time frame we got. It's fun. It's good, and it's interesting. I'm here. I'm down. I want to see what they're gonna do. Sorry. I'm here for it. So, what's the know-it-all index? Computer, bring up the know-it-all index, please, for this episode. There you go. My know-it-all index for this episode. It's a good starter, man. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 because they established a lot of really good things. They answered a lot of quick questions, told us where everybody was, set the stage nicely, and everything is wonderful. And it feels to me like Star Trek. Hey, your mileage may vary, and that's totally okay. Let's have a conversation about it. Talk about it in the comments section. So that's really what's left. Is I want to engage with you guys a lot more, mainly because you got to remember, I'm a Star Trek fan. This is my happy place. I love me some Star Wars. I love me Boba Fett, Mandalorian, and all those things. I'm a huge Marvel fan. But if I had to say I have a fandom in my heart, it's Star Trek. So I fully intend to be kind of immersing myself more in the genre and in Star Trek a lot more. So by all means, like, subscribe, click the little bell icon. But there you go. Now you know. And if knowing is half the battle, you are on your way to being a know-it-all. And remember, everyone loves a know-it-all. See you next week.